Our scripture reading this morning comes from the book of 1 Kings, chapter 3, verses 3 to 14. And if you'd like to follow along in your bulletins, you're welcome to. So let us hear these holy words. Solomon loved the Lord, walking in the statutes of his father David, only he sacrificed and offered incense at the high places. The king went to Gibeon to sacrifice there, for that was the principal high place. Solomon used to offer 1,000 burnt offerings on that altar. At Gibeon, the Lord appeared to Solomon in a dream by night, and God said, "Ask what I should give you." And Solomon said, "You have shown great and steadfast love to your servant, my father David, because he walked before you in faithfulness, in righteousness, and in uprightness of heart towards you. And you have kept for him this great and steadfast love, and have given him a son to sit on his throne today. And now, O Lord my God, you have made your servant king in place of my father David, although I am only a little child. I do not know how to go out or come in. And your servant is in the midst of the people whom you have chosen, a great people, so numerous they cannot be numbered or counted. Give your servant, therefore, an understanding mind to govern your people, able to discern between good and evil. For who can govern this, your great people?" It pleased the Lord that Solomon had asked this. God said to him, "Because you have asked this, and have not asked for yourself long life or riches, or for the life of your enemies, but have asked for yourself understanding to discern what is right, I now do according to your word. Indeed, I give you a wise and discerning mind. No one like you has been before you, and no one like you shall arise after you. I give you also what you have not asked, both riches and honor all your life. No other king shall compare with you. If you will walk in my ways, keeping my statutes and my commandments, as your father David walked, then I will lengthen your life."
Author and theologian Walter Brueggemann was fond of remarking that when it comes to any scripture, we ought to consider the genre of literature that is in the biblical text and allow that genre of literature to inform our interpretation. If you ask me, this story seems a little bit more like that of fairy tale. So perhaps it gives the preacher a license to begin with a genie story. Once upon a time, on a cold Boston afternoon at a Harvard University faculty meeting, a genie appeared with an academic dean and a number of different PhDs. They were all sitting around a mahogany conference table, and the genie asked the academic dean, "I am going to grant you one wish. I will give you whatever it is that you want. I'll give you a couple of options. You can have billionaire wealth, you can have a long life, or you can have infinite wisdom." Of course, the academic dean chose the infinite wisdom, and lightning struck the conference room, and the genie disappeared in a poof. Well, all of the dean's colleagues began to look at the dean, and at this point there was this halo kind of revolving around his head, and he was dizzy from all of the newfound knowledge and wisdom that was going on in his brain. And finally, one of his PhD colleagues, she said to him, say something, anything. We are all so thirsty for it." The dean joked, "I should have taken the money." If a genie were to appear to you and ask you for one wish, what would you wish for? Better yet, if God were to come to you and offer you one wish, what would it be? Welcome to our scripture passage this morning. Once upon a time in the history of Solomon, a young boy is appointed as king of the nation of Israel, and God appears to the young boy in a dream and says back to the young boy, "I will grant you one wish." And we know what is on the table. You can have riches, Solomon. You can have protection from your enemies. You can have a long life. What is it that you will wish for? And Solomon opted for wisdom. On first reflection, when I consider what Solomon wished for, I say to myself, well, really, would that have even made my top 5 in this moment? But then upon further reflection about my own life, I got to thinking, maybe there's something to this wishing for wisdom. For I consider the decisions I have to make on a daily basis related to myself and my family, the decisions that I make in my ministry, decisions about the future. And maybe you can relate to this. Often there are so many voices. There is so much telling me to go in one direction or another. There is just so much that seems to be a screaming and directing, and so much information, and I really struggle from time to time to know just what course of action to take. If you can relate with that, then hear the good news of this text. God imparts wisdom to those who wish for it. Later in the New Testament, James in his epistle, James 1 chapter 1 verse 5, says that for anyone who asks for wisdom, God, who is generous, will impart wisdom to that person who might be willing to ask. If only it were easy to receive that wisdom for God. For really and truly, when we consider receiving wisdom from God, it's not easy because we do live in just that world, a world inundated by information. Everything from Google to WebMD to ChatGPT to whatever it is that we put into a search engine. We live in a world that is so full of information. We live in a world, too, that has been inundated by artificial intelligence. I mean, consider how many news stories have been about AI just in the last 2 weeks. From politics to world events to sports, AI is now involved in just about every area of human life, including, yes, the church. Just this past week, our production team here at the church made marvelous use of artificial intelligence as we filmed a new bargain box promotional video for our church website. And AI is, of course, like any other kind of technology, morally neutral. It depends on how you deploy it and how exactly you make use of it. But is that all we need? Information? Perhaps the great Danish theologian Søren Kierkegaard was right when he remarked, "There is no lack of information in our world. Something else may be missing." What is it that may be missing? Maybe, just maybe, it is in fact wisdom. Some years ago, a wonderful scholar by the name of Amy Jill Levine visited here at NaplesUCC. She doesn't write too much in the area of homiletics, but when it comes to preaching, she makes a very, very wise remark. She says that over the course of many of our lifetimes, part of what has changed about preaching is that no longer does any congregation rely on the preacher as the key source of information. For example, you could go home this afternoon and type in this scripture passage into your phone and have more information and perspectives on that scripture than you could ever imagine. That being the case, said Levine, where there is a hunger is for the minister, he or she, to embody the metaphor of resident wise sage. that there may be something beyond even the biggest and greatest assemblage of human information for which people remain very, very hungry. It may be the wisdom of God. For it really is interesting to think about this difference between wisdom and information. Many of you have had children or perhaps grandchildren who have returned to school this week or maybe returning to school next. And I've read a number of articles about the return to school in 2024. One of the most interesting of which was an article in the USA Today about a poll amongst parents of high school students and what their chief worry is in their child returning back to school. And in this article, it was a little bit surprising. The chief worry was not about test scores or grades or even safety. You know what the chief worry is for American parents of high school students in this country and returning to school? Whether or not their students will have the capacity to form meaningful friendships and interpersonal relationships with their classmates. Very interesting, if not illuminating, that there is a hunger out there for something that maybe is beyond just information. Or if you're into simplicity, just the other day I was driving up to Bonita past a church with a marquee sign, and the marquee sign just simply read, "Confused?" Be sure to Google it, but make sure after you Google it to got it. Google it or got it. Information or wisdom. What if there's something beyond just the information of our world? Sometimes it can come through a still small voice. Other times it comes through scripture or theology or music. Still other times it can come through life experience. Still other times through a friend or a trusted advisor. Still other times through prayer and wishing for it from God. Comes through a number of different avenues, yes, in ways that are mysterious. But the good news of this text is that God is still in the business of imparting wisdom to those who wish for it, a wise and discerning mind. I'll close this morning with a final story. It is one of my favorites. It comes from the military, from the United States Navy. Once upon a time, there was a captain of a ship out in the dark waters of the ocean. And as he looked out, he noticed the twinkling of a light. And so he asked his signalman to send out a message that he wanted the other light to take direction 10 miles south or 10 degrees south, and sent that message out. And promptly the captain received a message back. No, please adjust your direction 10 degrees north. Well, this captain, he wasn't particularly happy, so he had his signalman put out another message to that light and said, I want you to please rechart your direction 10 degrees to the south, and then added a little oomph to it, said, I am a captain. Well, almost immediately he got a message back, said, I am third class Seaman Jones. I want you to alter your direction 10 degrees to the north. Well, the captain was very, very angry at this point, and he had his signalman put out another message, said, you better move 10 degrees south right now. I am a battleship. And very promptly he received a message back from third class Seaman Jones. No, captain, 10 degrees north right now. I am a lighthouse. In a world as dark as ours, where there is so much information, so much that is artificial, praise be to our wise God, who has not yet abandoned the lighthouse.